She'd been gone 20 years. The town wouldn't recognize her, but she'd recognize it. Every building, every shadow, every lie it had become. The woman rode into Red Hollow on a black horse just after dawn. Dust rose behind her like smoke from something burning. She didn't hurry, didn't slow, just kept that steady pace like she'd been riding it for days and would ride it for days more. The horse was the first thing people might have noticed if they'd been paying attention. Big, black as midnight, moving with the kind of discipline that didn't come from fear. It came from trust. But nobody was paying attention. Red Hollow had stopped noticing strangers years ago. Too many had passed through. Too many had left. The ones who stayed learned to keep their eyes down and their questions to themselves. The woman sat easy in the saddle. No tension in her shoulders. No urgency in her posture. Her hat was pulled low, casting her face in shadow. A long coat dusty from travel. Boots worn but cared for. Everything about her said she'd done this before. Ridden into places that didn't want her. And ridden out again when she was done. The main street stretched ahead. Wide. Too wide for a town this size. Like it had been built with bigger dreams than it could ever fill. The buildings leaned slightly tired. Sun-bleached wood. Cracked porches. Windows filmed with years of dust. No river ran through Red Hollow. No railroad stopped here. There was no reason for this place to exist anymore. And yet it did. Places like this didn't live on hope. They lived on habit and fear. The woman's eyes moved constantly, not nervous, observational. She clocked the saloon on her left. 2 stories, balcony facing the street. Good vantage point. She noted the general store ahead. The sheriff's office across from it, door closed. The livery stable at the far end, half empty. She knew these streets. Knew them like you know the layout of a house you grew up in even decades later. Your feet remember where the floorboards creak. Your eyes remember which windows let in the morning light. But she didn't let that show. A man stepped off the boardwalk without looking, nearly walked into her horse. The animal stopped patient. The man glanced up, muttered something that might have been an apology or might have been annoyance, and kept walking. He never really saw her. That was fine. She wasn't here to be seen, not yet. The woman guided her horse to the saloon, dismounted in one smooth motion, tied the reins to the hitching post. The horse settled immediately like it knew to wait. And it did know. They'd been waiting together for a long time. She stepped onto the boardwalk. Her boots made solid sounds. Not loud, just present. The kind of footsteps that didn't apologize for the space they took. The saloon doors were the swinging kind. Half height. She pushed through. Inside the air was cooler. Dim. It took a moment for eyes to adjust from the bright morning outside. The smell hit first. Whiskey, tobacco, sweat, wood that had soaked up decades of all three. A few men sat at tables. Early drinkers, or maybe they'd never stopped from the night before. A bartender wiped glasses behind the counter. Automatic. Rhythmic. The piano in the corner sat silent. The woman walked to the bar. The bartender looked up. Took her in with a glance that lasted less than a second. Woman. Alone. Dusty. Traveler. Not a threat. Not interesting. "What'll it be?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Let the question sit. Looked at him, then at the mirror behind the bar. It was cracked, the silver backing flaking, but it showed the room, showed the men at the tables, showed the exits. "Water," she said. Her voice was quiet, not timid, just low, the kind of voice that didn't waste itself on volume. The bartender blinked. "Water." "Yes." He shrugged, filled a glass from a pitcher, set it in front of her. She paid. He took the coin without really looking at it and went back to his glasses. The woman picked up the water. Didn't drink yet, just held it. Turned slightly so her back was to the corner and she could see the room. One of the men at a table glanced her way, looked through her, went back to his cards. She took a sip. The water was lukewarm, probably been sitting in that pitcher since yesterday. But it was wet. That was enough. Through the window she watched the street, watched people move about their morning business. A shopkeeper sweeping his porch, a woman carrying a basket, a kid running then slowing when an adult shouted at him to quit it. Normal, ordinary, the surface of things. But underneath she could feel it. The weight. The fear that lived here now so familiar, nobody even called it fear anymore. They just called it how things were. A woman moved through the saloon, older than the drinkers, younger than the bartender. She carried a tray collecting empty glasses, but her eyes were sharp, alert. She'd been doing this long enough to read a room without looking like she was reading it. She passed close to the bar, glanced at the woman with the water glass. For just a moment, something flickered. Recognition. No. Familiarity. Like seeing a face that reminded you of someone but you couldn't place who. "You're new," she said. Not unfriendly, not welcoming either, just stating fact. The woman at the bar looked at her. Didn't nod. Didn't deny. The saloon woman held her gaze for a heartbeat longer, then quieter. "You shouldn't be here." It wasn't a threat. More like advice. The kind you give when you know it won't be taken, but you say it anyway because your conscience needs to hear itself try. The woman at the bar said nothing. The saloon woman moved on, collected her glasses, disappeared into a back room. Outside, a rider appeared at the end of the street, then two more behind him. They moved at a walk, confident, like they owned the space they moved through, because in a way they did. The woman watched them in the mirror. 3 men, armed, not trying to hide it. The lead rider had a red bandana around his neck. The other 2 wore dark hats, brims low. The men in the saloon noticed too. Cards were set down. Drinks were finished quickly. One man stood, dropped coins on the table, and walked out the back way. The bartender kept wiping his glass. Didn't look up. The woman set down her water, still half full, walked to the door. "Ma'am," the bartender called. She paused. "You might want to finish that inside." She looked back at him. He wasn't meeting her eyes, just wiping that same glass over and over. She stepped through the swinging doors. The heat hit her again. The sun was higher now. The 3 riders had stopped in the middle of the street near the general store. The woman walked to the edge of the boardwalk, sat down on a bench outside the saloon, leaned back, crossed her arms, like she had all the time in the world. Across the street movement. A man stood in the doorway of the general store. Older, 60s maybe, thin, the kind of thin that came from worry, not poverty. His hands gripped the doorframe. He was looking at her, not at the riders, at her, and his hands were shaking. The old man's name was Elias Turner. Once a long time ago he'd been someone different, someone who thought he mattered, someone who believed that if you kept your head down and did your work you'd be left alone. He'd been wrong about that. For 3 days he'd been watching the road, sitting in the same chair outside his store, barely eating, barely sleeping, just watching, because he knew. The way you know when a storm's coming even before the sky changes. You just feel it in your bones. And now she was here. He didn't recognize her face. Too many years, too much distance. But he recognized the way she sat, the way she didn't look away when the world told her to, the way she existed in a space like she'd earned it, not borrowed it. She looked like her brother. Elias's chest tightened. His breath came shallow. He wanted to go inside, lock the door, pretend he hadn't seen her, pretend this wasn't happening. But it was too late for pretending. The 3 riders had noticed him now. The one with the red bandana, a man named Samuel, turned his horse toward the store. "Elias Turner," Samuel called out. Not loud, didn't need to be. His voice carried the weight of certainty. "Mr. Crow wants a word." Elias didn't move. Couldn't move. Samuel walked his horse closer. The other 2 followed. They stopped a few feet from the boardwalk, close enough to be menacing, far enough to have space if things went wrong. "You hear me, old man?" Samuel said. Elias's mouth was dry. "I heard." "Then step down here. Let's take a ride." It wasn't a request. Everyone knew that. The few people still on the street had already found reasons to be elsewhere. Doors closed, shutters pulled. Red Hollow had learned how to disappear in plain sight. Elias looked past Samuel, at the woman on the bench. She was watching, not with urgency, not with concern, just watching the way you watch something you've been expecting. Samuel followed his gaze, glanced at the woman, then dismissed her with the same glance. Just another traveler, another nobody. "Ma'am," he said, conversational. "This is business. You'll want to move along." The woman didn't respond, didn't even look at him directly. Samuel frowned slightly, not used to being ignored. "I said move along." Nothing. One of the other riders, younger, shifted in his saddle. "Samuel, we don't have time for—" "I know what we have time for," Samuel cut him off. He looked at the woman again. "Last chance, ma'am. This doesn't concern you." The woman finally turned her head, looked at him. Her eyes were dark, hard to read in the shadow of her hat, but there was something in them, something still, like deep water. "Doesn't it?" she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the street like a knife. Samuel straightened slightly. The dismissal was gone. Now he was actually seeing her. "You know this man?" The woman stood, slowly, no rush, no hesitation. She stepped off the boardwalk into the street. Elias's breath caught. "No, don't." But he wasn't sure if he was saying it to her or to himself. The woman walked toward Samuel's horse, stopped about 10 feet away, far enough to be respectful of the animal, close enough that conversation didn't need to be shouted. "I know him," she said. Samuel's hand drifted closer to the gun at his hip, not drawing, just resting near. The other two riders did the same. Tension threaded through the air like wire pulled tight. "Then you know he's got business with Mr. Crow," Samuel said, "and you should know better than to interfere with that." The woman tilted her head slightly. "What if I told you I've been waiting for this?" Samuel blinked. Waiting for what? For him to come looking for Elias Turner. That got his attention. All three riders were focused on her now. Really focused. The casual arrogance had drained away, replaced by something sharper. Wariness. "Who are you?" Samuel asked. The woman didn't answer. Elias stepped forward. His legs barely held him. "She's—" "Nobody," the woman interrupted. "I'm nobody." "Then why are you here?" Samuel's voice had an edge now. The woman looked at Elias, really looked at him for the first time. Her expression didn't change, but something passed between them. Recognition, history, weight. "Because," she said, turning back to Samuel, 20 years ago, Elias Turner gave your boss a name, gave him my brother's name." The street went still. Samuel's eyes narrowed. "Your brother?" "Yes." "And what happened to your brother?" The woman's voice stayed level, flat. "You know what happened." Samuel studied her, pieces clicking into place. "You came back." "I did." "For him." Samuel nodded toward Elias. "For all of it." One of the other riders, the younger one, laughed nervously. "Samuel, this is—" "Shut up," Samuel said, not looking away from the woman. His hand was fully on his gun now, not gripping, just touching. "Ma'am, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're making a mistake." "Am I—" "This town belongs to Barrett Crow. You're standing on his street, interfering with his business. That's a problem." The woman nodded slowly. "I know who runs this town." "Then you know you should walk away." "I've been walking for 20 years, she said. "I'm done walking." Samuel's jaw tightened. He glanced at his men. A silent exchange. They shifted ready. "Last warning," Samuel said. "Step aside. Let us take the old man. Whatever you think you're owed, this isn't the way." The woman stood perfectly still. No tension, no fear, just that deep, still calm. "When you ride back to Crow," she said, "tell him something for me." "What's that?" "Tell him I'm not here for the old man." She paused. Let it settle. "I'm here for him." Samuel's face hardened. "That's a bold thing to say." "It's a true thing to say. Truth doesn't mean much when you're dead." The woman smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cruel. It was just acknowledgement. Of him. Of what he'd said. Of what was about to happen. "No," she agreed. "I suppose it doesn't." Samuel's hand moved toward his gun. And that's when everything changed. The woman was already in motion. Not fast in the way people think of fast. No wild scramble. No desperate lunge. just efficient, practiced. The movement of someone who'd done this so many times it had become reflex. Her coat swept back. Her hand found the grip of her revolver. Samuel realized his mistake. Saw it in that split second before metal cleared leather. He'd been talking when he should have been moving, been posturing when he should have been shooting. Too late. The first shot cracked through the air. Samuel jerked in his saddle. His eyes went wide. He looked down at his chest where a dark stain was already spreading. His gun fell from his hand, clattered into the dust. He swayed, tilted, fell. The second rider reacted. Fast. Faster than Samuel. His hand was on his gun, pulling it free. The woman's arm pivoted. Smooth. No wasted motion. The second shot. Louder than the first somehow. Or maybe it just felt that way because now there was no pretense, no conversation, just violence. The second rider spun, caught in the shoulder. His gun went flying. He grabbed at the wound, crying out. His horse bolted, and he fell hard into the street. The third rider, the young one, froze. His hand was halfway to his gun, but he stopped, staring at his companions, at the woman, at the inevitability in her eyes. "Don't," she said. He swallowed. "I don't." His hand moved, not toward his gun, toward the sky. Surrender. But the woman's gun was already leveled at him. "Wait," he said. "I'm not." The third shot cut him off. He fell backward off his horse, didn't move again. Silence crashed down like a physical thing. Heavy. Suffocating. 3 bodies in the street. 3 horses spooked and skittish, moving away from the smell of blood and gunpowder. The woman stood in the middle of it all. Her gun still raised, smoke drifting from the barrel. She looked at each body, confirming. Professional. Then, satisfied, she lowered the weapon, opened the cylinder, ejected the spent shells. They clinked onto the hard-packed dirt. From her coat she pulled fresh rounds, loaded them, 1, 2, 3, methodical, calm. Clicked the cylinder shut, holstered the gun. Only then did she look around. The street was empty, or seemed to be, but she could feel the eyes. Behind every window, every cracked door, every shadow, everyone had seen. The woman turned to Elias. He was still standing on his boardwalk, pale as death itself, shaking. "Get inside," she said. Her voice was the same as before. Quiet. Steady. Like she'd just had a conversation, not killed 3 men. Elias's mouth opened. Closed. No words came. "Get inside," she repeated. "They'll come now. All of them." He finally found his voice. "They were always going to come." The woman nodded. "I know." She walked past him, past the store, past the entire street, back to her horse still tied outside the saloon, still waiting patiently. Behind her, Elias stood in the doorway of his store, looking at the bodies, at the blood darkening the dust, at the gun in the street that Samuel would never pick up again. And he understood something he'd been trying not to understand for 3 days. She hadn't come to save him. She'd come to finish something. And Red Hollow, whether it knew it or not, was about to learn the difference. Inside the Silver Dollar Saloon, the bartender stood frozen behind his counter. The woman who'd warned the stranger earlier stepped out from the back room, her face tight. "Mercy," the bartender whispered. "Did you see?" "I saw," Mercy said. "Who is she?" Mercy looked out the window at the woman untying her horse. "Someone who used to live here, a long time ago. You know her?" "I know who she was." Mercy's voice was quiet, sad. "I don't know who she is now." Outside, the woman mounted her horse, rode slowly down the street, away from the bodies, away from the store, toward the edge of town. She stopped on a small rise, looked back at Red Hollow. The sun was higher now, the heat building, the day settling into itself. From up here she could see the whole town, every building, every shadow. She'd been 7 years old the last time she stood on this hill. Her brother had brought her here, pointed out the different places, told her what each one was for. This town could be something, he'd said, something good. She'd asked him what he meant. A place where people don't have to be afraid, where doing the right thing doesn't get you killed. She'd asked if he thought it would ever be that. He'd smiled, squeezed her shoulder. I'm going to try." Now 20 years later she looked at what his trying had cost. A grave on a hill outside town. No marker, no name, just another piece of dirt that used to be a person. She turned her horse, rode back down toward Red Hollow. There was more to finish, and she'd only just started. The news reached Barrett Crow before the bodies were cold. He was in his office above the Silver Dollar when his lieutenant knocked. 3 short raps, the code for urgent. "Come." The door opened. The lieutenant stepped in. Young, efficient, he'd learned not to waste Crow's time with preamble. 3 men down, Main Street." Crow looked up from the ledger he'd been reviewing. His face didn't change. No surprise, no anger, just attention. "Which 3? Samuel, Reed, the kid Marcus." Crow set down his pen, carefully, aligned it with the edge of the ledger. "How?" "Gunshot, all 3. "How many shooters?" The lieutenant hesitated. "1." Now Crow's eyebrow raised. Barely, but it was there. "1. "Yes, sir." "Tell me." The lieutenant shifted his weight. "A woman." Silence filled the room. Not uncomfortable, just waiting. Crow stood, walked to the window, looked down at the street. From here he could see the bodies, 3 dark shapes in the dust, could see the small crowd starting to gather, the vultures human and otherwise. "A woman," he repeated. Not a question, just turning the words over, testing them. "Yes, sir. Alone. Nobody knows who she is." "Where is she now?" "Rode out, East Road, stopped on the hill, then came back. She's outside town, set up camp near the old creek bed." Crow turned, looked at his lieutenant. "You're sure 1 woman?" "3 of my men." "I'm sure." "Samuel was fast." "Yes, sir." "Reed was smart." "Yes, sir." "And the kid was young, but he was learning." The lieutenant said nothing. There was nothing to say. Crow walked to a small table, poured himself whiskey, didn't offer one to the lieutenant, took a slow sip. "I want to see the bodies," he said. Main Street had that stunned quiet that comes after violence, like the air itself was holding its breath. Crow walked slowly, deliberately. Let people see him. Let them remember that even when 3 of his men were dead, he didn't rush, didn't panic. Control came from consistency, from showing that nothing, not even death, could make you act outside your nature. Sheriff Dutch Holloway stood near the bodies. Technically, he should have been doing something official, investigating, taking statements, enforcing law. But everyone knew that law in Red Hollow was a performance at best, and Dutch had forgotten his lines years ago. "Mr. Crow," Dutch said as he approached. Nervous, always nervous. Crow nodded, knelt beside Samuel's body. The shot had taken him center mass, clean entry wound, no exit. The bullet was still inside. Professional shot, not lucky, not random. Someone who knew exactly where to aim for maximum damage with minimum waste. Crow stood, moved to the second body. Reed, shoulder shot, but Reed had fallen badly. Broken neck from the impact with the ground. The bullet might not have killed him. The fall did. Interesting. The third body. Young Marcus. Headshot. Quick, merciful in its way. The boy had probably tried to surrender. Probably begged. It hadn't mattered. Crow straightened, looked at Dutch. "You see it happen?" "No, sir. I heard the shots. By the time I got here it was over." "Anyone see it?" Dutch glanced around. People were watching from windows, doorways, but no one met his eyes, no one volunteered. "Folks are saying Elias Turner was involved," Dutch offered. "The woman she was protecting him, or something like that." Elias Turner. Crow turned the name over in his mind. "Bring him to me." "Sir, I don't think—" "That wasn't a request, Dutch." The sheriff swallowed, nodded, walked toward the general store. Crow remained with the bodies. His lieutenant stood a respectful distance back. "3 shots?" Crow asked. "That's what people are saying. 3 shots, 3 bodies." Crow looked down at Samuel. "She didn't miss, didn't waste bullets, didn't hesitate." "No, sir." "That takes training, experience." He paused. Or certainty. Sir, Crow looked up at the hill where his lieutenant had said the woman stopped. Someone who's been thinking about this for a long time, rehearsing it, waiting for it. That's not anger. That's not impulse. That's preparation meeting opportunity. He walked toward the saloon. The lieutenant followed. Inside, Mercy was cleaning glasses, same as always, but her hands were steadier than Dutch's. She'd seen violence before. It didn't shake her the way it shook men who pretended they were hard. Mercy, Crow said, sitting at his usual table, the one in the corner where he could see the whole room. Mr. Crow. She set down a glass. Tell me about the woman. Mercy met his eyes. Most people couldn't do that. But she'd been running this saloon when Crow arrived in Red Hollow, before he owned it, before he owned everything. She was one of the few people who remembered when things were different. She came in this morning, Mercy said, ordered water, sat at the bar, watched the street. You talked to her, briefly. What did you say? Mercy's jaw tightened slightly. I told her she shouldn't be here. Why would you say that? Because I recognized her. Crow leaned forward. Explain. Mercy set down the glass she'd been wiping. Not her specifically, but something about her. The way she moved, the way she looked at things. Like she knew this place. She's been here before. Long time ago. Had to be. She wasn't more than a child then. Crow's eyes narrowed. How long ago? Mercy knew what he was asking, knew the timeline he was thinking about. 20 years, she said quietly, give or take. The room seemed to contract. The air got heavier. 20 years, Crow repeated. He sat back. Thought. 20 years ago, Red Hollow was different, smaller, less organized. Crow had been building his reach then, establishing territory, making examples. There'd been a man, he couldn't remember the name, but he remembered the principle. Someone who'd tried to organize the townspeople. Talk about standing together, about pushing back against outside interests. Crow had dealt with it, efficiently. There was a family, Mercy said, like she could hear his thoughts. Brother and sister. Parents died of fever. The brother, he was young, mid-20s maybe. He tried to make something of this place, tried to get people to stand up for themselves. Crow nodded slowly, the memory sharpening. I remember. The sister was just a girl, 7, 8. She watched him. Where is she now? She left, right after. Someone took her east. An aunt, maybe, I don't know, but she left. Crow steepled his fingers. And now she's back. Seems so. For Elias Turner. Mercy's silence was answer enough. The door opened. Sheriff Dutch entered, practically dragging Elias. The old man looked like he'd aged another 10 years in the last hour. His face was gray. His hands shook. Mr. Crow, Dutch said. Here's... I know who it is. Crow gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down, Elias. Elias sat. Looked like he wanted to disappear into the wood. Tell me about the woman, Crow said. Elias's mouth opened. Closed. No sound. Elias, I don't have patience today. 3 of my men are dead. I need to understand why. And I think you know. Elias's voice cracked. He swallowed. Her name, I don't know what she calls herself now, but her brother. His name was William Hayes. Crow went still. The name landed like a stone in water. William Hayes. Yes. He remembered now. Not just the principle. The person. A good man. That's what made him dangerous. Good men made other people believe things could be different, could be better. That was a threat to any system built on the acceptance of how things were. So Crow had removed the threat. I gave you his name, Elias whispered. 20 years ago. When you asked who might cause problems, I told you about William Hayes. You did. Crow's voice was calm, factual. I didn't know what you'd do. I swear I didn't. Yes, you did, Elias. You knew exactly what I'd do. That's why you gave me the name. Because you were scared, and you thought giving me someone else would save you. Elias's face crumpled. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't matter. What matters is that his sister is here, and she's killed 3 of my men, which means this isn't finished." Crow stood. "Where is she?" "I don't know. She rode out. She told me to get inside, said they'd all come now." "They'll all come," Crow repeated. He smiled, not friendly, not cruel, just acknowledgement of a chess move. "She's smart. She knows killing 3 men sends a message, forces a response." "What are you going to do?" Dutch asked. Crow walked to the window, looked out at the street, at the bodies being loaded onto a wagon now, at the blood stains in the dust. "I'm going to find out what she wants," he said, "and then I'm going to decide if she gets it." The woman made camp a mile outside town, near what used to be a creek. It only ran a few months a year now. The rest of the time it was just a dry scar in the earth. But it had trees, cover, and it was high enough to see anyone approaching from Red Hollow. She unsaddled her horse, brushed him down, checked his hooves, fed him grain from her pack. The horse ate patiently. He'd been with her 5 years, knew her rhythms, knew when to rest and when to run. When the horse was settled, she built a fire. Small, just enough to heat coffee and chase the chill that would come when the sun set. She sat with her back against a tree, gun within reach, always within reach. The day faded. The sky turned orange, then purple, then that deep blue that comes before true dark. Stars started to appear. Out here, away from even the small lights of Red Hollow, they were brilliant, countless. She remembered this sky, remembered her brother pointing out constellations, making up stories about them when he didn't know the real ones. "That one there," he'd said, pointing, "that's the broken wagon. See how it's tilted. That's because the driver was too stubborn to stop when the wheel cracked, kept going, and now he's stuck in the sky forever learning the hard way that pride costs." She'd asked what the lesson was. That sometimes you have to stop, admit something's broken, fix it properly before you go on. She'd asked if he ever stopped, if he'd laughed, ruffled her hair. "Not often enough, little sister, not often enough." The memory hurt. Old wounds always hurt worse than fresh ones. Fresh ones you could still hope would heal clean. Old ones you knew exactly what kind of scar they'd leave. She pulled out her gun, checked it, cleaned it, even though she'd already done this earlier. It was ritual now, meditation. Her hands knew the movements. Disassemble, wipe down each piece, check for wear, oil, reassemble, load. Her brother had taught her this too. She'd been 10. Too young, some would say. But he'd said age didn't matter. Responsibility did. "A gun isn't a toy," he'd said, sitting cross-legged across from her in almost this same spot. "It's a tool, a serious one, and if you're going to carry it, you need to understand what it means." She'd asked what it meant. "It means you've decided some things are worth defending. Some lines can't be crossed, and if someone crosses them, you're willing to answer that with finality." She'd asked if he'd ever shot anyone. He'd been quiet for a long time. Then, once, a man was hurting someone weaker, wouldn't stop. I asked him to, then I told him to, then I made him. "Did he die?" "No, but he understood me after that." She'd asked if he was sorry. "Sorry I had to, yes. Sorry I did no." Now she reassembled her gun. The firelight caught the metal. She loaded 6 rounds, one more than she'd used today. Always stay loaded. Always be ready. Because tomorrow or the day after that, Barrett Crow would come. And when he did, this would end the way it had to. In Red Hollow, Elias Turner sat in his store in the dark. He hadn't lit a lamp, didn't want light. Light meant seeing himself in the mirror, seeing the man he'd become. On the table in front of him sat a photograph. Old, faded, the edges worn from being held too many times. William Hayes, smiling, young, full of that stupid optimism that gets good men killed. Next to him in the photograph, a little girl, his sister, gap-toothed grin, braids, eyes that believed everything her brother told her about how the world could be. Elias picked up the bottle. Whiskey. Not good whiskey. The kind you drank when you weren't drinking for taste, when you were drinking to forget. But he couldn't forget. He'd been trying for 20 years. It didn't work. Every morning he woke up and remembered what he'd done. Every night he went to sleep hoping tomorrow would be the day it didn't matter anymore. Today tomorrow had arrived, and it mattered more than ever. He poured, drank. The whiskey burned going down, settled in his stomach like guilt made liquid. "I didn't know," he said to the photograph, to the empty room, to himself. "I swear, William, I didn't know he'd kill you. I thought he'd just... I don't know what I thought." But that was a lie. He'd known. Maybe not the specifics, maybe not the exact method, but he'd known that giving Barrett Crowe a name meant signing a death warrant. He'd done it anyway, because he was scared, because he thought if he gave Crowe someone else, Crowe would leave him alone. And it had worked. For 20 years it had worked. Until today. "She came back," he whispered. "Your sister. She came back." He drank again. The bottle was half empty now, or half full, depending on how you looked at it. Elias had always been a half-empty kind of man. "She killed 3 of them. 3, just like that. I don't even know her name anymore. Don't know who she is. But she's got your eyes. That same look you used to get when you'd decided something, when nothing could change your mind." The photograph didn't answer. The dead never did. But Elias kept talking anyway, because the silence was worse. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that doesn't fix anything, doesn't bring you back, doesn't undo what I did, but I'm sorry. I've been sorry every day since, and I'll be sorry every day until I die." He paused, poured again. "Which might be soon. She didn't come here to save me. I know that. She came here to finish what you started, and I'm just part of the mess that needs cleaning up." Outside, Red Hollow slept, or pretended to. The streets were empty, doors locked. People had learned to make themselves scarce when violence came to town. Elias looked at the photograph one more time, then set it face down on the table. Couldn't look at it anymore, couldn't stand those hopeful eyes. He finished the bottle, let his head rest on the table, and waited for morning, when consequences would come due. Dawn came cold and clear. The woman rose before the sun, packed her camp, saddled her horse, rode back toward Red Hollow as the sky turned from black to gray to that pale gold that meant day was breaking. She didn't go into town, not yet. Instead, she circled, came at it from the north, found a spot on higher ground where she could see the whole layout. Red Hollow spread out below her, small, fragile, like something that could blow away in a strong wind. She watched, learned, saw the saloon, the biggest building, 2 stories, balcony facing the street. That would be Crowe's place. Men like him needed height, needed to look down on what they controlled. Saw the general store. Dark. Elias would be in there, hiding or drinking or both. Saw the sheriff's office. A joke. The sheriff was bought. Everyone knew it. The badge was just decoration. Saw the patterns. Who moved where? Who avoided what? The invisible lines people didn't cross. She saw the system Barrett Crowe had built, and she saw how it could break. After an hour, she rode down, into town, openly. She wanted to be seen, tied her horse outside the saloon again, same post as yesterday, pushed through the doors. The saloon was quiet, too early for drinkers, but Mercy was there, behind the bar, wiping the same eternal glasses. She looked up when the woman entered. No surprise, like she'd been expecting this. "Coffee?" Mercy asked. The woman nodded, sat at the bar. Mercy poured, set the cup down. The woman wrapped her hands around it. Let the warmth seep in. "You've got people nervous," Mercy said. "Good. Crowe's looking for you." "I know. What are you planning?" The woman took a sip. The coffee was strong, bitter, perfect. "I'm planning to finish something," she said. Mercy leaned against the bar, studied her. "You don't remember me, do you?" The woman looked up, really looked, at the lines around Mercy's eyes, the gray in her hair, the way she held herself. Something clicked. The saloon, 20 years ago. You worked here then. Owned it then. Still own it. Crow just takes a percentage now. Mercy's smile was tired. I remember you. You were small, quiet, watched everything. I still do. Your brother used to bring you here sometimes. On Sunday afternoons, you'd have lemonade while he talked to folks, trying to convince them they didn't have to accept things the way they were. The woman's hands tightened slightly on the cup. Did you believe him? Mercy was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to. But wanting doesn't change anything. And your brother found that out the hard way. The woman set down her cup. Tell me what happened. The real version. Not the story people tell themselves to sleep at night. Mercy glanced toward the door, making sure they were alone. Then she pulled up a stool, sat across the bar. Your brother was organizing people, she said, getting them to stand together, refuse Crow's terms. It was working. For a while it was actually working. And then Crow made him an offer. Private. Just the two of them. Mercy's voice dropped. He told William he could leave. Tonight. Take you and go east. Never come back. And Crow would let it all slide. Let him live. The woman's breathing stopped. What did he say? He said no. Mercy's eyes were wet. He said someone had to stand. Someone had to show people it was possible. And if he ran, he'd be proving that it wasn't. So Crow killed him. Crow tried one more time. Told him he was being stupid. That dying wouldn't help anyone. That he could do more good alive somewhere else than dead here. And... Mercy's voice cracked slightly. And your brother said, maybe. But I'll die knowing I tried. Can you say the same? The woman closed her eyes. That sounded like William. Stubborn, principled, stupid and brave in equal measure. They shot him that night, Mercy continued. Made it look like an accident at first, a fall. But everyone knew. We all knew. And we all stayed silent. Because we were afraid. The woman opened her eyes. They were dry, but hard. You were there? I saw them take him. Saw them bring him back. Saw them bury him on the hill outside town. No marker. No ceremony. Just dirt. And you said nothing. I said nothing. Mercy didn't flinch from it. I kept my head down, kept my business, kept living, and I've regretted it every day since. The woman stood, put money on the bar, more than the coffee cost. He had a choice, she said quietly. He did. He chose to fight. Yes. The woman looked at Mercy. So do I. She walked toward the door, stopped, turned back. Thank you, she said, for telling me. Mercy nodded. What are you going to do? The woman's hand rested on the door. I'm going to finish what he started. That means killing Crow. I know. He won't be like the others. He's smart, careful. He won't underestimate you now. Good, the woman said. I'd hate for this to be easy. She pushed through the door, into the morning sun. Behind her, Mercy stood alone in the empty saloon, and for the first time in 20 years she felt something like hope. Even though she knew it would probably get her killed, the woman spent the day watching, not from a distance. That would have been safer, but safety wasn't what she'd come for. She walked Red Hollow's streets like she owned them, like the 20 years away had been a brief absence, not an exile. People noticed. How could they not? The stranger who'd killed 3 men yesterday was now strolling past their homes, their businesses, their carefully maintained pretense of normal life. But no one approached her. No one asked questions. Fear had a way of making people polite. She stopped outside the livery stable, the same one where William used to keep his horse, a brown mare named Patience. The woman wondered if the mare had lived. Probably not. 20 years was a long time for a horse. The stablemaster, an old man with bent shoulders, glanced at her, then found something very interesting to look at in the back of the barn. She moved on. Past the church. Small. White paint peeling. The preacher had died years ago from what she'd heard. No one had replaced him. Red Hollow didn't have much use for salvation anymore. She walked the perimeter, noted the exits, the approaches, the places where a man could hide, the places where he couldn't. All the while she felt eyes on her. From windows, from doorways, from the second-floor balcony of the Silver Dollar Saloon. Barrett Crow was up there. She couldn't see him, but she knew. The same way an animal knows when a predator is watching. Let him watch, let him wonder, let him plan. She was planning too. By noon she was back at the saloon, sat at the same table in the corner, the one with a view of the door and the street beyond. Mercy brought her food without being asked. Bread, cheese, some kind of stew that had been simmering since morning. "You're making him nervous," Mercy said quietly, setting down the plate. "Am I walking around like that, bold as brass? He's not used to people who don't fear him." The woman broke off a piece of bread. "I'm not people." Mercy almost smiled. "No, I suppose you're not." She left the woman to her meal. The stew was good, simple. But that was the thing about frontier food. It didn't need to be complicated, just needed to be enough. She was halfway through when the door opened. A man stepped in, not one of Crow's riders. Someone else, older, maybe 50, dressed better than most folks in Red Hollow. Vest, clean shirt, boots that had seen polish recently. He looked around the saloon, found her, walked over. "May I?" He gestured to the chair across from her. The woman chewed, swallowed. "It's a free country." He sat, folded his hands on the table, looked at her with the kind of assessment men in power use, measuring, calculating. "My name is Thomas Grant," he said. "I work for Mr. Crow." "I know who you work for." "Then you know I'm here on his behalf." "I assumed." Grant cleared his throat. "Mr. Crow would like to speak with you, privately. No trouble. Just a conversation." The woman took another bite of stew, let him wait while she chewed, swallowed. "Why?" "To understand your intentions, to see if there's a way to resolve this situation without further complications." "Complications." She said the word like it tasted bad. "That's what you call 3 dead men. 3 men who drew on you first, from what I understand. Self-defense is reasonable. Mr. Crow recognizes that." "How generous of him." Grant shifted slightly, uncomfortable. He'd been sent to negotiate, but he wasn't negotiating from strength, and they both knew it. "Ma'am, I don't know what happened between you and Mr. Crow in the past, but whatever it is, maybe there's a way to make it right. Money, land, safe passage to wherever you want to go. He's willing to discuss terms." The woman set down her spoon, looked at him. "Terms," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Tell me something, Mr. Grant. Do you know who I am?" He hesitated. "I know you're connected to someone from a long time ago." "My brother, William Hayes." Grant's face went carefully neutral. "I've heard the name. He tried to make this town better, tried to organize people to stand up for themselves. Your employer killed him for it." "That was 20 years ago, before my time. Time doesn't change what happened." "No, ma'am. But it does change what's possible. Mr. Crow is a different man than he was then. Red Hollow is different. Maybe there's room for reconciliation." The woman leaned back, studied him. "You believe that?" Grant met her eyes. "I believe Mr. Crow wants to avoid more bloodshed. If that can be accomplished, then yes, I believe it's possible. And if I say no," his face hardened slightly, "then things will get worse, for everyone." "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality, ma'am. You killed 3 men. You can't kill them all. And if this becomes war, people will die. People who have nothing to do with whatever grievance you're carrying." The woman picked up her spoon again, took another bite of stew. "Tell Mr. Crow I'll meet with him," she said. Grant's shoulders relaxed slightly. "When?" "Tomorrow, sunrise, out front of the saloon." "Tomorrow morning, agreed. I'll tell him." He stood, turned to leave, then paused. "Ma'am, if I may, Mr. Crow is a reasonable man when given the chance, whatever happened before. Maybe there's a way forward that doesn't end in more graves. The woman looked at him. You're new to Red Hollow, aren't you, Mr. Grant? 3 years. Then you don't know. This town is already full of graves. Some have markers, some don't, but they're there, under every street, every building. This whole place is built on what they buried. Grant's jaw tightened. That may be true, but adding more won't fix it. Maybe not, the woman said, but it'll finish it. He left without another word. Mercy appeared from the back. You really going to meet with him? I said I would. You think he'll negotiate in good faith? The woman finished her stew. No, but I want to hear what he has to say. Want to see if he's changed, if 20 years taught him anything. And if it hasn't, then tomorrow morning this ends the way it has to. Evening came slow and heavy. The heat of the day gave way to that peculiar stillness that settles over frontier towns when the sun drops. The woman was back at her camp, tending her horse, checking her gear, the rituals of preparation. She heard the footsteps before she saw him, deliberate, not trying to hide, announcing presence. Elias Turner emerged from the trees. He looked worse than yesterday, if that was possible, like he'd aged another decade overnight. I know you don't want to see me, he said, stopped a respectful distance away. The woman continued brushing her horse, didn't look at him. But I need to tell you something, before whatever happens tomorrow. She said nothing, but she didn't tell him to leave. Elias took that as permission, came closer, not too close, just enough to be heard without shouting. What I told you yesterday, about giving your brother's name to Crow, that was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Now she looked at him. Go on. Elias's hands shook. He clasped them together to stop it. Didn't work. I told you I was scared, that Crow threatened me, that I thought giving him someone else would save me. All of that was true. He swallowed hard. But that's not why I did it. The woman set down the brush, turned to face him fully. Then why? The word came out like pulling a knife from a wound. Jealousy. Silence. The word hung between them, heavy, ugly. Your brother, Elias continued, his voice breaking. People listened to him, respected him. When he walked into a room, people noticed. When he spoke, they heard him. He mattered. And you didn't. I was nobody, the shopkeeper, the man you bought nails from, that's all. I could have lived in Red Hollow my whole life, and when I died, people would barely remember my name. The woman's face was stone. So when Crow asked for names, Elias said, when he wanted to know who might cause trouble, I didn't just think about saving myself. I thought maybe if your brother was gone, maybe people would look at me. Maybe I'd matter. He was crying now, not sobbing, just tears running down his weathered face. I was small, petty. I wanted what he had, and I thought taking it from him would give it to me. Did it? The woman's voice was cold, clinical. No, it made me smaller, made me nothing. For 20 years I've been nothing, less than nothing, because at least nothing has the excuse of being empty. I'm full of what I did, and it rots inside me every single day. The woman walked toward him. He flinched, but she didn't strike him, just stood close enough to see every line of guilt etched into his face. You gave him up because you were jealous, she said. Yes. You sent him to die because you wanted people to notice you. Yes. And did killing him make you matter? Elias's face crumpled. No, they forgot him. And they never saw me to begin with. I traded his life for nothing, less than nothing. The woman stared at him, through him. You're telling me this now. Why? Because tomorrow you might kill me. And if you do, I want you to know. I want you to know it wasn't just fear. It was worse. It was envy. It was me being so small and broken that I couldn't stand seeing someone good, someone trying to make things better. He met her eyes. I deserve whatever you decide to do. I've deserved it for 20 years. The woman was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. The horse shifted weight. Night sounds carried from the trees. Finally she spoke. "I'm not going to kill you, Elias." Relief flooded his face. "Thank you. Thank you, Not because you don't deserve it," she cut him off, "but because living with what you are is worse than dying could ever be." The relief drained away. "You're going to wake up every morning," she continued, "for whatever years you have left, and you're going to remember that you killed a good man because you wanted to feel important, and that will be your punishment, every single day." Elias's legs nearly gave out. He caught himself on a tree. "Death would be mercy," the woman said. "I'm not giving you mercy. I'm giving you justice." She turned back to her horse. "Now leave. I have work to do." Elias stumbled away, into the dark, carrying his confession like chains. The woman watched him go, then returned to her preparations. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she'd face the man who'd actually given the order, who'd actually pulled the trigger. Elias was just small, broken, a coward who'd traded a good man's life for nothing. Barrett Crow was something else entirely. And when the sun rose, they'd settle accounts. In Red Hollow, in the room above the Silver Dollar, Barrett Crow sat at his desk. Thomas Grant stood before him, delivering his report. "She agreed to meet?" Crow asked. "Tomorrow, sunrise, out front." What was her demeanor? Grant considered. Calm, controlled, not eager, not afraid, just certain. Crow nodded. He'd expected that. "What did you offer her?" "Money, land, safe passage. You said to start generous." "And?" She wasn't interested. "She say that explicitly?" "Not in so many words, but yes. She's not here for terms." Crow stood, walked to the window, looked down at the street, at the place where 3 of his men had died. "Tell me about her," he said. "Your impression." Grant was quiet a moment, choosing words carefully. "She's different than the usual trouble we get. Not angry, not wild. She's like someone who's been thinking about this for a very long time, rehearsing it, and now she's just following through, like a debt coming due." "Dangerous. Very." Crow turned. "You think she can be reasoned with?" "I think she can be talked to." "Whether she can be reasoned with?" "I don't know, sir, but I think you should be very careful tomorrow." "I'm always careful, Thomas." "With respect, sir. This is different. The men she killed, they were good, fast, and she dropped them like they were nothing. If tomorrow goes wrong, it won't." "How can you be sure?" Crow smiled, thin. "Because I'm offering her what she wants." Grant frowned. "Sir, she wants me dead. I understand that. Her brother died on my orders. She's here for revenge. That's simple, clean. I can work with simple." "You're going to let her kill you?" "No, Thomas. I'm going to give her the chance. There's a difference." He walked to a cabinet, opened it. Inside a gun belt, well maintained, but dusty from disuse. "I haven't worn this in 5 years," Crow said. "Haven't needed to. When you control a town properly, you don't need to do your own violence. Others do it for you." He lifted the belt, buckled it on. The weight felt familiar, foreign. "But before I built all this," he continued, "before Red Hollow, before the system, I was just a man with a gun, and I was very good at being that man." Grant's face went pale. "Sir, you're going to duel her?" "If that's what she wants, yes." "That's insane. She's already proven. She's proven she can shoot 3 men who weren't expecting her. Tomorrow she'll face 1 man who is, and we'll see if 20 years of waiting has made her better, or just more desperate." Crow checked the gun, drew it. The motion was smooth, muscle memory, like riding a horse. You never really forget. "Set it up," he said. "Tomorrow, sunrise, just like she asked. You'll witness. So will the sheriff. I want it official, legal, a duel, agreed to by both parties. And if you lose," Crow holstered the gun, "then I lose. And Red Hollow gets what it's been waiting for, someone to kill the tyrant." He said it without irony, without self-pity, just stating a fact. "But I don't plan to lose." The night before the duel, the woman didn't sleep. She sat by her fire, gun disassembled in front of her, cleaning each piece with the kind of attention that bordered on reverence. This gun had been her brother's. He'd given it to her when she was 12, too young probably, but he'd said she needed to know, needed to be able to protect herself. He'd taught her to shoot, to breathe, to wait for the exact right moment. Most people shoot too fast, he'd said. They panic, they rush, but the difference between living and dying is often just 1 second, 1 breath, 1 moment of calm when everyone else is chaos. She'd asked if he'd ever been scared. Every time, he'd said. Fear is good. Fear keeps you sharp. It's panic that kills you. She reassembled the gun, loaded it. 6 rounds, each one seated carefully, each one a decision. Tomorrow one of these rounds would end Barrett Crow, or one of his would end her. She was ready for either. The fire burned down to coals, the stars wheeled overhead. The night grew cold. She pulled her coat tighter, rested her hand on the gun, and waited for dawn. Sunrise came clear and cold. The woman rode into Red Hollow as the first light touched the tops of the buildings. The street was empty, but she could feel the people. Behind windows, doors cracked just enough to see. She dismounted outside the Silver Dollar, tied her horse. The animal was calm, steady. He'd been through this before. Different towns, different men, same ending. The saloon doors opened. Barrett Crow stepped out. He was older than she'd expected, 50 maybe, gray at the temples, lines around his eyes. But he moved like a younger man, confident, controlled. He wore a gun belt, clean, well-maintained. The gun itself looked old, used, but cared for. Behind him came Thomas Grant and Sheriff Dutch Holloway, witnesses. Crow stopped about 20 feet away, studied her. "You look like him," he said. "Your brother, same eyes." "I know. Thomas told me you wanted to talk. I'm here to talk." The woman's hand rested easy near her gun, not touching, just ready. "What happened to my brother?" she said. "Tell me from your side." Crow considered. "He was trying to organize people against me, against my business interests. I gave him a chance to walk away. He refused. So I removed the problem. You killed him. I gave the order. Other men pulled the trigger. But yes, I'm responsible." The honesty was unexpected, but not unwelcome. "Why?" she asked. "Because what he was doing threatened everything I'd built, threatened the stability of this town. If people started believing they could stand against me, the whole system would collapse. And that would be bad. For me, yes. For the town." He paused. "Maybe, maybe not. But it wasn't a risk I was willing to take." The woman took a step forward. Crow didn't move. "He had a family," she said. "A sister who worshipped him. A life he was building. And you took that because it threatened your profit margin." "I took it because the world doesn't run on good intentions. It runs on power. And your brother was trying to redistribute power without understanding what that actually costs. It cost him his life." "Yes. And I'm sorry for that. Not sorry I did it, but sorry it was necessary." The woman's eyes were hard. "You really believe that killing him was necessary?" Crow met her gaze. "I believe that in that moment, with the information I had, it was the only choice I could see. Would I make the same choice now, 20 years later? I don't know. But I can't change what's done." "No," the woman said. "You can't." She took another step. Now they were maybe 15 feet apart. "Thomas offered me terms," she said. "Money, land, safe passage. And you refused." "I did. Because you want me dead. Because I want this finished." Crow nodded slowly. "Then let's finish it." He walked to the center of the street. The woman followed. They stood facing each other, 20 paces apart. Thomas Grant's voice shook slightly. This doesn't have to happen. Mr. Crow, please." "It's all right, Thomas," Crow said, not looking away from the woman. "Sometimes things have to end the old way, before they can begin new." Sheriff Dutch stepped forward, trying to find some authority in his voice. "As sheriff of Red Hollow I have to ask, are you both sure about this?" "Yes," Crow said. "Yes," the woman said. Dutch swallowed. Then it's agreed. At the count of 3, you both draw. May God have mercy on whoever falls." He stepped back. The street was silent. The sun was just clearing the horizon. Long shadows stretched across the dust. The woman's breathing was slow, steady, the way William had taught her. Crow's hand hovered near his gun, relaxed, but ready. "1," Dutch called. The woman thought of her brother, of the photograph Elias kept, of the grave on the hill with no marker. 2. Crow's eyes never left hers. In them she saw something unexpected. Not fear, acceptance. Like a man who'd always known this day would come. 3. Both moved. Crow's hand moved first, fast, faster than a man his age should move. Years of practice don't fade. They settle into muscle, into instinct. His gun cleared leather in a motion so smooth it looked effortless. The shot cracked across the morning air. But the woman was already moving. Not away. Sideways. A shift of weight. A step that had been rehearsed 1,000 times in her mind. The bullet tore past her, close enough that she felt the displacement of air, close enough to smell the gunpowder, but not close enough to hit. Her own gun came up, level, steady. She didn't rush. One breath, like William taught her. Bang! The sound was different than Crow's shot, heavier somehow, more final. Crow jerked. His gun arm dropped. He looked down at his chest, at the dark stains spreading across his shirt. For a moment he seemed confused, like he couldn't quite understand what had happened. He tried to raise his gun again, tried to bring it back up, but his arm wasn't obeying anymore. The gun wavered, dropped. His knees buckled. He fell forward, caught himself with one hand, stayed there on all fours, breathing hard, blood dripping into the dust beneath him. The woman walked forward, gun still raised, still ready. She stopped 3 feet away, looked down at him. Crow coughed, red flecked his lips. "Good," he said, voice wet, struggling. "That was very good." "I know," the woman said. He looked up at her, tried to smile. "Your brother would be proud. My brother is dead." "Yes." Crow coughed again, harder. "And now, so am I." His arm gave out. He collapsed fully, face in the dirt, chest still rising, falling, slower each time. The woman stood over him, watching, waiting. After what felt like minutes but was probably only seconds, the movement stopped. Barrett Crow was dead. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The woman lowered her gun, opened the cylinder, ejected the spent shell. It clinked onto the ground next to Crow's body. She reloaded. One fresh round. Clicked the cylinder shut. Holstered. Only then did she look around. Thomas Grant stood frozen, face pale, hand halfway to his own gun but not completing the motion. Sheriff Dutch had backed up several steps, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. From windows and doorways faces appeared, cautious, uncertain. The woman walked to her horse, untied the reins. "Wait," Thomas called, found his voice finally. "You can't just—" She turned, looked at him. "Can't just what?" Thomas swallowed. "Kill a man and ride away. Watch me. The law." "The law?" The woman's voice was quiet, but it cut. "You want to talk about law, in a town where the sheriff takes orders from a criminal, where justice hasn't existed for 20 years, you want to talk to me about law?" Dutch flinched, but didn't argue. Thomas looked at Crow's body, at the blood soaking into Red Hollow's dust, at the end of the system he'd served. "What happens now?" he asked. Not aggressive, just lost. "That's up to you," the woman said. "All of you. You can build something better, or you can find another Crow. That's your choice." She mounted her horse. The animal shifted weight, ready to move. "But her—" She nodded toward the saloon where Mercy stood in the doorway. "She remembers when this town was different, when people tried to make it better. Ask her. and decide if you want to try again, or if you want to keep living like this." She turned the horse. "Wait!" Mercy called, stepped off the boardwalk. "You're leaving." "I'm done here." Just like that. The woman looked at her. "I came to finish something. It's finished." "And Elias?" "Elias lives. That's his punishment." Mercy nodded slowly, understanding. "What about you? Where will you go?" The woman looked east, toward the rising sun, toward roads she hadn't traveled yet. "Somewhere else," she said. "There's always somewhere else." She rode down the main street, past the bodies, past the people emerging slowly from hiding, past the general store where Elias Turner stood in the doorway. She didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge him. That was part of his punishment, too. To be unseen, the way he'd always felt. At the edge of town, she stopped, looked back. Red Hollow spread out behind her, small, fragile, broken in some ways. But maybe with Crow gone it had a chance to heal. Or maybe it would just find a new way to be broken. That wasn't her concern anymore. She'd done what she came to do. The rest was up to them. The woman rode for an hour before stopping, found a rise that gave her a view back toward Red Hollow. The town looked even smaller from here, like something that could disappear if you looked away too long. She dismounted, let her horse drink from a small stream, sat on a rock and looked at the horizon. The morning was clear, beautiful even, the kind of morning that made you forget for a moment that the world was hard. She pulled out the gun, her brother's gun, now hers, looked at it in the sunlight. She'd killed 4 men with this weapon, 3 riders who'd underestimated her, 1 tyrant who hadn't. Was it enough? She didn't know. Revenge was supposed to feel like something. Satisfaction, maybe, or release. But all she felt was tired and alone. She thought about what Mercy had asked. Where would she go? The truth was, she didn't know. For 20 years, she'd had a purpose, a direction. Find Red Hollow, find the men responsible, make them answer for what they'd done. Now that was finished, and she didn't know what came next. The horse nuzzled her shoulder, gentle, patient. She stood, holstered the gun, ran her hand down the horse's neck. "Just you and me now," she said quietly, "like always." The horse exhaled, steady, uncomplicated. Horses didn't worry about purpose, they just kept moving. Maybe that was enough. She mounted, turned the horse east, and rode toward whatever came next. Behind her, Red Hollow faded into the distance. A memory, a chapter closed, but not forgotten, never forgotten. In Red Hollow the day unfolded slowly. Sheriff Dutch organized some men to move Crow's body. They laid him out in the saloon. Someone would need to build a coffin, dig a grave, do all the things you do when someone dies, even if that someone was Barrett Crow. Thomas Grant sat at Crow's desk, looking at ledgers, at records, at the intricate system of control that had kept Red Hollow running for 2 decades. It was all falling apart already. Within an hour of Crow's death, people were making their own decisions. A merchant refused to pay his weekly protection fee. A debtor decided his loan was paid in full regardless of what the book said. A woman who'd been too afraid to speak up about being cheated found her voice. The system only worked when everyone believed it would be enforced, and the only man who could enforce it was dead. Thomas could try to hold it together. He had the records, the contacts, the infrastructure, but he didn't have the will. He'd come to Red Hollow 3 years ago looking for opportunity, found it working for Crow. Good money, respect of a sort, protection. But he'd never ordered a man killed, never pulled a trigger, never crossed certain lines. Now those lines didn't matter anymore. The whole game had changed. He stood, walked to the window, looked down at the street where Crow had fallen. Someone had already scrubbed away most of the blood, but you could still see the stain, dark against the lighter dust. 20 years of control, of power, of fear, ended in seconds by a woman with a gun and a memory. Thomas made a decision. He walked downstairs, found Mercy behind the bar. "I'm leaving," he said. She looked up, unsurprised. When? Today. Now. Before people decide they need someone to blame for everything Crow did. Smart. He pulled out a key, set it on the bar. This opens Crow's office, his safe. All his records are there. Do with them what you want. Mercy looked at the key. Why me? Because you've been here longer than any of us. You remember what this place was before. Maybe you can help it become that again. He turned to leave. Thomas, Mercy called. He stopped. You weren't a bad man. You just worked for one. Remember the difference. He nodded and left. By evening he'd be gone from Red Hollow. By next week he'd be in another territory, another town, another life. But he'd remember this place. Remember the woman who rode in alone, who faced down the devil they'd all been too afraid to challenge. He'd remember. And maybe in some small way, he'd be better for it. Elias Turner sat in his store as the sun climbed higher. People walked by outside. Some glanced in. None entered. He'd opened the door like always. Set out the goods like always. Pretended today was normal. But it wasn't normal. Everyone knew what he'd done. The woman hadn't told them directly. But word spread. It always did in small towns. Elias Turner had betrayed William Hayes, had given his name to Barrett Crow, had sent a good man to his death. And now he had to live with that, live with everyone knowing. Around noon a woman came in, Mrs. Patterson. She'd been buying flour from him for 15 years. She walked to the counter, set down coins, took the flour, left without speaking, without looking at him. That was how it would be now. He understood. People wouldn't confront him, wouldn't shout or accuse. They'd just not see him, would treat him like furniture, like something that existed but didn't matter. He'd wanted to matter. 20 years ago he'd betrayed a man because he wanted to matter. Now he was invisible, and he'd be invisible for whatever years he had left. The woman had been right. This was worse than death. Death would have been an ending. This was just continuation, day after day of existing without mattering, of being nothing. He looked at the photograph on the table. William Hayes, smiling, hopeful. "I'm sorry," Elias whispered. "I'm so sorry." The photograph didn't answer. The dead never did. But Elias would keep apologizing anyway, for years, until his voice gave out, until he had nothing left but the apology. And even then it wouldn't be enough. Mercy Hall closed the saloon early that evening, sat alone at a table. The key Thomas had given her rested in front of her. She could open Crow's safe, look at his records, see all the deals, the payments, the threats, the names of everyone who'd cooperated with him over the years, including her own. She'd paid Crow protection money for 20 years, had let him take a percentage of everything she made, had kept quiet when he hurt people, killed people, destroyed lives. She'd told herself she had no choice, that it was survival, that speaking up would just get her killed without changing anything. And maybe that was true. But it was also a choice she'd made every day for 20 years. William Hayes had made a different choice, had chosen to speak up, to stand, even knowing what it would cost. His sister had made a choice too, had come back, had faced the man who'd killed her brother, had finished what William started. Now Mercy had a choice. She could take Crow's records, burn them, pretend none of it happened, let everyone start fresh with clean slates and clear consciences. Or she could open them, let people see who'd cooperated, who'd profited, who'd been complicit, including herself. She picked up the key, turned it over in her fingers, then made her decision. She stood, walked to the fireplace, threw the key into the cold ashes, let the past stay buried. Let people carry their own guilt privately. Forcing it into the open wouldn't make anything better, would just create new feuds, new resentments, new ways to hurt each other. Red Hollow needed to move forward, and you couldn't move forward while constantly looking back. She'd carry her guilt. Elias would carry his. Thomas had already left carrying his. And maybe slowly the town would learn to carry itself again. Without Crow, without fear, without the system that had made them all smaller than they could have been. It wouldn't be easy, wouldn't be quick, maybe wouldn't even work, but it was a chance, and chances were more than they'd had yesterday. 3 days later, a young boy rode out to the old creek bed where the woman had made camp. He was maybe 12, too young for this kind of errand, but old enough to be curious, to want answers. He'd watched the duel, hidden behind a water barrel, seen the woman face down Barrett Crow without flinching, seen her win. He needed to know who she was, what she was, where she came from. But when he reached the creek bed, the camp was gone. Just ash from a dead fire. Some compressed grass where a horse had been tethered. Boot prints leading east. She was gone. He stood there for a while, looking at the empty space where she'd been, trying to imagine her. The quiet woman who'd come back after 20 years, who'd killed 4 men without seeming to feel anything about it, who'd ridden away like it meant nothing. But it had meant something. He could feel it. The whole town could feel it. Red Hollow was different now. People walked differently, talked differently, like they'd forgotten they were allowed to breathe and were just now remembering. It would take time, years maybe, before the fear truly left, before people believed they were actually free. But it had started. The change had started, because one woman had come back, had remembered, had refused to let the past stay buried. The boy pulled out a small notebook, a pencil. He'd been writing things down lately, stories he heard, things he saw. His teacher said he had a talent for words, for capturing moments. He wrote, "She came from the east when the sun was new, rode a black horse that moved like smoke, killed the men who needed killing, and left before anyone could thank her, or curse her, or understand what she really was." He paused, added, "Some say she was a ghost, some say an angel of death. I think she was just a woman who kept a promise, and sometimes that's the most dangerous thing you can be." He closed the notebook, mounted his horse, rode back toward Red Hollow. The story would spread, would change in the telling, would become legend, but some part of the truth would remain, had to remain, because Red Hollow needed to remember, needed to carry the knowledge that one person could make a difference, that standing up mattered, that the past didn't have to determine the future, as long as someone was willing to fight for something different. The woman rode for 2 weeks before she stopped thinking about Red Hollow every day. Rode through territory she'd never seen, towns that didn't know her, people who looked at her and saw just another traveler. It should have been freeing, the anonymity, the fresh start. But she carried Red Hollow with her, carried William, carried the weight of 4 dead men, carried the look on Elias Turner's face when she'd told him his punishment was living. Some nights she'd dream, not nightmares exactly, just memories. William teaching her to shoot, to ride, to stand her ground when the world pushed back, his voice in her head. Some things are worth fighting for, some things are worth dying for. Know the difference. She'd asked him once which category he fell into, worth fighting for or worth dying for. He'd laughed. "Neither. I'm just your brother. I'm worth living for. And that's harder than either of the other two." She'd been too young to understand then, but she understood now. Living was harder than dying. Carrying the weight was harder than putting it down. Moving forward was harder than standing still. But she kept moving anyway, because that's what William would have wanted. Not revenge, not justice, not even closure, just for her to keep living, keep moving, keep finding things worth the effort. 4 months after leaving Red Hollow, she found herself in a town called Silver Creek, smaller than Red Hollow, quieter, tucked into a valley between 2 ridges. She stopped at the general store, needed supplies, grain for her horse, coffee for herself. The shopkeeper was friendly, talkative, told her about the town, the people, the way things worked here. "We're peaceful folk," he said, "law-abiding, don't get much trouble." "That's good," she said, "though." He lowered his voice. "We do have a man, owns most of the land around here, controls the water rights, makes things. Difficult. for folks who don't cooperate. The woman went still. Difficult how? Nothing violent, nothing like that. Just economic pressure, you might say. Folks lose their leases, their access to water. Things get hard. She paid for her supplies. How long has this been going on? Few years now, since he arrived. Man named Sutton, Clayton Sutton. The woman loaded her saddlebags, tied them carefully. The shopkeeper watched her. You planning to stay? We could use someone who doesn't scare easy. She looked at him, at his hopeful face, at the desperation he was trying to hide. She could keep riding, could leave Silver Creek to its problems. She'd done what she came west to do, had settled her accounts with the past. She didn't owe these people anything, but William's voice was in her head again. Some things are worth fighting for. She mounted her horse, looked down at the shopkeeper. Where does Sutton spend his time? The shopkeeper's face lit up. The hotel, top floor. He's there most days. She nodded. I'll be back. Where are you going? To introduce myself. She rode toward the hotel, not fast, not slow, just steady, because she'd learned something in Red Hollow, something she hadn't expected to learn. She'd thought finishing her business would bring her peace, would let her put down the gun and live quiet. But that wasn't who she was anymore. Maybe it never had been. She was her brother's sister, carried his lessons, his beliefs, his stubborn refusal to let bad men win just because fighting them was hard, and there would always be bad men. Towns that needed someone to stand up, someone to push back, someone willing to do what others were too afraid to do. She couldn't save them all, couldn't fix every broken town, right every wrong, but she could try, one town at a time, one bad man at a time. William would have done the same, would have kept fighting until there was nothing left to fight with, so she would too. Not for revenge anymore, not for closure, not even for justice, just because it needed doing, and she could do it. The hotel came into view. 3 stories, well-maintained, owned by Sutton probably. She dismounted, tied her horse, checked her gun. 6 rounds, like always, enough to finish what needed finishing. She walked into the hotel. The clerk looked up. Can I help you, ma'am? Clayton Sutton, she said. Which room? The clerk's face went pale. I can't tell you that. Yes, you can. Something in her voice made him reconsider, made him understand that this was inevitable, that he could help or he could get out of the way, but he couldn't stop it. 3rd floor, he whispered. End of the hall. She walked to the stairs, started climbing. Behind her the clerk watched, then quietly walked out the front door. By the time she reached the 3rd floor, the street outside was clearing, people finding reasons to be elsewhere, getting out of the way of whatever was about to happen. They'd seen this before. Different town, different woman, but the same pattern. Someone arrives, someone who doesn't scare, someone who sees what's wrong and decides to fix it. Usually that someone ends up dead. But sometimes they win. And when they do, everything changes. The woman walked down the hall. Her boots made quiet sounds on the wooden floor. She stopped outside the last door, could hear voices inside. Men talking, laughing, comfortable, safe. That was about to change. She knocked, 3 times, firm. The voices stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened. A man stood there, 40 maybe, well-dressed, confident, used to being in charge. Can I help you? He asked. Polite, but with an edge, like he was already categorizing her, deciding if she was worth his time. The woman looked at him, saw Barrett Crow, saw every man who'd ever decided his comfort was worth someone else's suffering. My name doesn't matter, she said quietly, but you're Clayton Sutton. I am, and you are. Someone who's heard things, about water rights, about economic pressure, about how hard things are for people who don't cooperate with you. Sutton's face hardened. I don't know what you've heard, but my business is legal, legitimate. If you have a complaint, take it to the sheriff. The sheriff works for you, doesn't he? Sutton smiled, thin. "I employ a lot of people in this town, the sheriff, the mayor, most of the landowners. I make this town work, like Barrett Crow made Red Hollow work." The smile vanished. "What?" "Barrett Crow. You know the name?" Sutton's hand moved toward his belt, toward a gun the woman hadn't seen but had assumed was there. Men like this always carried guns, always thought they'd need them someday. "I know the name," Sutton said carefully. "I heard he died. Few months back. Shot down in the street by some woman." "That's right. You're a long way from Red Hollow, ma'am." The woman's hand rested near her own gun, relaxed, but ready. "Not that far," she said. "And men like Crow, like you, they're everywhere. Different names, different towns, same pattern. I'm nothing like Crow. Aren't you?" Sutton's jaw tightened. "I haven't killed anyone. Yet. But you've hurt people, broken them, taken what wasn't yours. The method doesn't matter. The result is the same. Who are you to judge me?" The woman was quiet for a moment, thinking about William, about Red Hollow, about Elias Turner living with his guilt, about all the small ways people destroyed each other. "Someone who's seen what happens when no one stands up," she said finally. "Someone who's done standing aside." Sutton's hand was on his gun now. "You threatening me?" "No. I'm giving you the same choice Barrett Crow got. Leave tonight. Dissolve your holdings. Free up the water rights. Let this town breathe again. And if I don't—" The woman's eyes were steady, dark, certain. "Then tomorrow morning you and I will have another conversation, in the street, and one of us won't walk away from it." Sutton stared at her, trying to find fear, trying to find doubt, trying to find anything he could use. But there was nothing there, just that deep, still certainty. "You're serious," he said. "I am. You'd kill me for people you don't even know. I'd give you the chance to do the right thing. What happens after that is your choice." She turned, walked away, down the hall, down the stairs, out into the evening air. Behind her, Clayton Sutton stood in his doorway, hand on his gun, face pale, trying to decide if he believed her, if she was really willing to die for this, for strangers, for principle. The woman mounted her horse, rode to the edge of town, made camp. Tomorrow would bring what it brought. Either Sutton would leave, or they'd settle it the old way. She was ready for either, because this was who she was now, who she'd always been, maybe. She just hadn't known it until Red Hollow, her brother's sister, carrying his fight, carrying his refusal to let bad men win, one town at a time, one choice at a time, for as long as she had breath and bullets. She built a fire, tended her horse, cleaned her gun, and waited for dawn. Somewhere in the distance a coyote called. Another answered. The sounds of the wild, of things that survived by being sharp, by being ready, by never backing down. The woman lay back against her saddle, looked up at the stars, the same stars William had pointed out all those years ago, the same sky, the same world, but different now, changed, because she'd changed it. Not fixed, not healed, just different. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could ever do. Change one small piece of the world, make one small stand, fight one small fight, and hope it mattered. She closed her eyes. Let sleep come. Tomorrow would bring what it brought, and she'd be ready. In Red Hollow the seasons turned. Summer faded into fall, fall into winter, winter into spring. The town changed slowly, the way most things change, not all at once, not dramatically, just gradually, like erosion, like growth. The sheriff started enforcing actual laws, stopped taking bribes. It was uncomfortable at first. People didn't know how to behave without the old system. But they learned. Merchants set their own prices, made their own deals. Some thrived, some failed. That was the risk of freedom. Mercy Hall kept running the saloon, but she changed the name. From the Silver Dollar to the Second Chance. People smiled at that, appreciated the sentiment. Elias Turner kept his store, kept existing. People still didn't talk to him much, still looked through him rather than at him. But he endured, day after day, year after year, carrying his guilt, earning his punishment through the simple act of continuing to breathe. And sometimes late at night, when the store was closed and the streets were empty, he'd look at the photograph of William Hayes and whisper, "Your sister came back. She finished it. I thought you should know." The photograph never answered, but somehow saying it helped, made the weight a little lighter, made tomorrow a little easier to face. On the hill outside town, someone finally put a marker on William Hayes's grave. Simple, wooden, carved with a name and 2 dates and 1 line. He stood when others knelt. Nobody knew who put it there. Nobody asked. But everyone who passed it understood. Some things were worth standing for, worth dying for, worth remembering. And Red Hollow would remember, would carry the story of the woman who came back, who settled accounts, who changed everything by refusing to let the past stay buried. The story would change in the telling, would become legend, would grow larger than the truth. But some kernel of truth would remain, had to remain, because people needed to believe that one person could make a difference, that standing up mattered, that the world could change. Even if the change was small, even if it was hard, even if it cost everything, it was possible. And sometimes possibility was enough. The woman rode, through territories with no names, towns too small for maps, places where the frontier was still being written. She helped where she could, fought when she had to, kept moving when there was nothing left to do. She didn't think of herself as a hero, didn't want statues or songs, didn't need gratitude or recognition. She was just doing what needed doing, the way William had taught her. Some towns welcomed her, some feared her, some asked her to leave. She accepted all of it, didn't take it personally, just kept moving, kept fighting, kept finishing things that needed finishing. Along the way she met others like her, people who'd lost something, who'd been changed by loss, who'd decided that if the world was going to be hard, they'd be harder. Some became friends, for a while, until their paths diverged. Some became enemies, until one of them stopped being a problem, and some just passed through. Ships in the night, souls on similar journeys but different roads. She carried them all with her, all the people, all the towns, all the fights. They made her who she was, not just William's sister anymore, not just a woman with a gun and a grievance, something else, something harder to name, a force, a presence, a line in the sand, and wherever she went, people would talk about her. The quiet woman on the black horse, who appeared when things were darkest, who stood when others couldn't, who finished what she started. They'd tell stories, make her larger than life, give her powers she didn't have, motives she didn't claim. But underneath all the embellishment, there'd be truth. She existed, she mattered, she changed things, and that was enough. 20 years after Red Hollow, the woman was older, harder, scarred in ways that didn't always show. But she was still riding, still fighting, still finishing things. She'd lost count of the towns, the men, the fights. They all blurred together after a while. Different faces, same story. Someone needed help, someone else needed stopping. She was there to do both, until the day she wasn't. It happened in a town whose name she'd forget by morning. A confrontation that should have been routine. A man who was faster than he looked. She saw it coming, saw the gun rise, saw the moment when everything changed. She drew, got her shot off first. But his shot still came, still found her. She felt it hit, felt the impact, the shock, the sudden understanding that this was different, this was the end. She managed to stay on her horse, managed to ride out of town, managed to find a quiet place under the stars. Then she couldn't manage anymore. She dismounted, more fell than stepped. Her horse stood close, patient, loyal to the end. She lay back against a tree, looked up at the sky, the same stars William had shown her, the same sky, the same world, different now. So different, but also the same. She thought about Red Hollow, about Elias, about Barrett Crow falling in the dust. She thought about all the towns after, all the fights, all the people she'd helped and hurt and saved and failed to save. She thought about William, about the boy she'd been when he was alive, about the woman she'd become after he died. Had she honored him? Had she finished what he started? She didn't know, would never know. But she'd tried. Every day, every fight, every choice, she'd tried. And maybe that was enough. Her hand found her gun, her brother's gun. She held it, one last time, then set it down, gentle, respectful. "I'm done," she whispered to the night, to the stars, to William. "I finished what I could. The rest is up to someone else." The stars didn't answer. The night didn't change. But she felt something. Peace, maybe. Or just acceptance. It didn't matter. She closed her eyes, let the darkness come. And somewhere in a town called Red Hollow, people were still telling stories about the woman who'd come back, who'd changed everything, who'd shown them that standing up mattered. The story would outlive her, would become legend, would inspire others to stand, to fight, to finish their own unfinished business. And that was enough. That was legacy. That was what William would have wanted. The woman's breathing slowed, stopped. The night carried on. The stars wheeled overhead. The frontier kept being frontier. But something had changed. Some small piece of the world was different because she'd been in it, because she'd chosen to stand, to fight, to finish. And in the end, that was all anyone could do. Make their stand, fight their fight, finish what they started. The rest was just details.